Hi, guys. Oh, we're doing a podcast show. Welcome to Matters Over Miles.
This is a bad idea.
It's only a bad idea because we haven't done it in a while.
Mary Pat used to have a podcast. It was called...
Just a podcast?
It was just a podcast.
Singular.
Well, it was a show.
One-dimensional.
You did, what, like 40 episodes?
41.
Wow.
That's a lot. Guys, spent a lot of time
So she's done this
that.
quite frequently.
You've been on 2 of those episodes, though.
I'm quite notorious for being a huge idiot in these settings. So
it's going to make everything really good. Anyways, welcome to the show, y'all. This is episode 1. Hee-haw.
One of question mark. We don't know.
This could go really well or really bad. I don't know. So we decided to do this podcast show and release it probably like a year from now? I think we were thinking
at least
like
6 months from now.
Yeah, like in January of
fall.
next year or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Long time from now. But when we suddenly have a ton of time on our hands.
And no real freedom to do anything. So
So it
here we
seemed
sit.
like a good idea. But the reason why we're doing this podcast show, by the way, welcome to Matters Over Miles. We have so many different stories, and there's so much more that we do just besides the music thing that it seemed like a good idea to put us in front of microphones and have us do a conversation.
Seemed like a good idea.
Well, it's going to turn into a brilliant idea. In the name of Christ. Thank you, Lord. Please bless it. Amen. But this episode, just kind of like an introductory. Is that how you say that?
Introductory.
Yeah. Not ductory.
No.
Dang it.
There's no CH in introductory.
All right. Well, an intro, just going to say that podcast episode, just to let you guys know how we're going to do this show. We're also kind of trying to partner this with Instagram TV as well. So
IGTV.
a little bit of visual.
What's the I?
G. She's doing sign language right now
G.
for T.
T.
V.
V.
Very good, Whit. Fantastic. Oh my gosh.
Mary Pat speaks fluent
I do not speak fluent. I speak.
American Sign Language. And by speak, you don't speak sign language.
Yes, you do. Don't
know how to
insult
say
an
that.
entire culture. That's terrible. They
I'm
do
not
too
insulting
speak.
anybody. I just don't know, like, what's the proper verb? You don't speak sign. I guess you do. I guess it is.
Sign language.
Yeah.
Does that feel better?
She's a
In your soul?
fluent communicator in American Sign Language.
I'm okay at it. I could use some courses to brush up.
Whatever.
Stop rolling your eyes. Okay. But anywho, why did we start talking about American Sign Language?
I'm not sure. The point is that we are doing a podcast, and this is just an introduction episode, is what you were trying to say.
Yes, trying to say.
We're going to break it up into like a couple different sections that will be frequent
Yes.
and consistent.
Yes.
So the first section is going to be just kind of like an update, current events type situation.
What's going on?
And then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of whatever the podcast is that we are discussing.
The best part of the
and then we're going to do some music at the end because it only seems right that take place.
We do music.
We are musicians,
I mean, yeah.
sort of.
Yeah, after all this time.
So yeah. So we'll just click right in here with the current events.
Welcome. All right, so so current events and when we say current events, yes, I would say like current events worldwide because you kind of can't
Just
help
for
it
some
right
reference,
now, but
we are recording this the day after Easter in the year 2020.
okay.
Just so you have some context of what current means to us.
I think also current events is personally kind of like what's going on with us or where we are in the world, because we're also not always going to be doing this podcast like in this room, this really fancy setting. This is like
With like 5 cameras.
this is super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get used to this.
Standards, bar set real high. But we're going to be taking the show with us wherever we might be traveling next. We just happen to be a little grounded along with
For a while.
the rest of the, world. So current events, how are you?
I'm great. I actually just, you can see here, gonna have a Band-Aid and some gauze on my arm. I just had my blood drawn a few moments ago because I'm participating in some research for COVID-19, of which I am a recovered patient. So that's a new and exciting thing. Currently, there's almost 2 million cases worldwide, I think.
And you get to say you're one of the
I was patient number 53 in the state of Tennessee, so I got it out of the way nice and early.
You've been recovered from that for like
I've
2 weeks now?
A couple weeks out of quarantine, and Tennessee is still, as I think every state is, we're still in the little lockdown, safer at home.
Yes. Stay at home. Do your part. Stay apart.
Yeah. There
are billboards and signs all over the
Tennessee
highways.
Department of Communication, or Transportation, sorry, not communication, TN dot, has the signs on all of the highways that say some quippy little phrase about buckling your seatbelt or not drinking and driving or
they
not texting.
They had a really cute one for Thanksgiving, don't lose your giblets. It was so funny.
And they literally always make me absolutely cry of laughter because they're super cheesy. And sometimes they rhyme and they're really cute. And then other times it's right now the phrase is
do your part.
Do your part, stay apart. And I'm that's not
part and part.
Man, every songwriter in Nashville probably sees that and is that's a poor rhyme. Come on now. Anyway, so yeah, we're in the midst of that, which is why we are recording these podcasts now, because we are off the road probably,
I don't know,
until July.
Yeah.
At least. The longer this goes on, the further out our travel schedule gets completely kiboshed. So who knows?
Yeah.
We're getting stuff like this accomplished, though.
Yes.
Prior to the COVID-19 debacle, both global and national and personal, was our blessed town of Nashville on March 3rd went through a very horrific tornado.
Yeah.
And Mary Pat and myself actually
we're less than a mile away from it.
The tornado,
yeah.
Which I've never had that happen to me. But yeah, our apartment is on a hill. And we woke up in the middle of the night to people telling us we needed to take shelter, which up to that point I really had never considered.
Well, the thing is,
where would I take shelter in such a thing?
And in Nashville, there's all these sirens that go off most of the time to tell you when thunderstorms are happening, but you don't really pay that much attention to them because they always, it's okay, another thunderstorm. But what makes the tornado bad now is that last night, current events, really terrible rain, really loud wind, and it was 3 in the morning, and I woke up and I was I'd left my bedroom to flee from my window to go into the middle of my apartment, and I just checked the weather and I was okay, it's just a really bad storm. So PTSD from tornadoes.
Yeah, and currently, the city still is, in the weeks following the tornado, we were a part of just some kind of cool relief efforts. The city did a great job of volunteering, and everybody got out and just started putting things back together and helping clean up debris and helping people find housing that needed it or whatever. Us and a few of our friends made meals on a pretty consistent basis for first responders for a while.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what we spent our time doing right after the storms happened. But now that the whole, safer at home orders have been put in place, the city is still just kind of in shambles. There's stuff, all the efforts for cleaning up everything have just kind of halted. So it's kind of rough, we are in East Nashville right now filming this, and you drive down Main Street and it's just looks like bombs went off everywhere.
Yeah.
Sad.
Because so many of the local businesses around here, they aren't able to do anything past that. I think I've seen a bank get recovered, but it's a bank, and then all the other places. But what's kind of cool about Nashville, what they're doing a lot of is this all the local food businesses, all the restaurants that are still open, apart from being swept away by a tornado, they're doing a lot of curbside, and it's cool to be able to actually see them doing those different things. But when you are trying to get to those places to go get your curbside stuff, you kind of, it's almost like driving through a war zone in order to get it. So it's very different. Like, you're told to stay at home and then you can go out to go get food. But then when you go out to go get food, you're reminded of this other thing that happened like 2 weeks before everyone was told to stay inside. So it's just been a lot current events wise as far as
month.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. And then we were gone all of February. We were in New England for the whole time. So it was kind of like,
I saw somebody said the other day that 2020 so far, it's like every month has been its own year.
oh my gosh, that's such a good explanation.
Because January
of it, though.
always feels like it's a whole year.
Yes.
It's like just like the month that never ends.
February,
and then February
felt everlasting.
was like January 2.0.
Yes.
And then March was like, oh, it's kind of spring, but also it's the longest month ever.
For sure.
Because there's so much stuff crammed into it.
So that's current events.
Current events. There you have it.
How's your heart for all of this stuff, though?
I think I'm coming into a clearing, maybe.
I asked that because she has some other things to say about that, because I was privy to it.
Being alone for me, like because Mary Pat and I live in the same apartment, and when I tested positive for COVID, it was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Because I can't go out, and I wasn't sick enough to be hospitalized and have somebody take care of me or something. So I was home and I needed to be quarantined for 14 days. But also for the first solid week of that, I was actually really, really sick. Like I could not, I was sleeping like probably 18, 20 hours a day. I had 103-degree fever, headache, the whole thing, like fatigued, couldn't hardly get out of bed for a little while. So MP was like taking care of me, which was very nice of her, but we were also like making great efforts at her not getting sick, because then it was like, well, if MP gets sick, then both of us are just completely stuck in here for the next month, and that's going to be terrible. So, she, like we lived in the same apartment, but I was actually in my bedroom for
Yep.
Which, like, I'm not that far removed from it, but even now it just seems like so crazy. I was actually physically in my bedroom and the bathroom that is attached to my bedroom for 14 whole days. I
think you going through it, like when you step away from it, you're like 2 weeks.
I can do it.
I did it.
Yeah.
It's good. But it's like, obviously your brain, one space.
Yeah, I am like, whenever you take like personality tests or whatever, I'm always like 55% extroverted and like 45% introverted. So I'm like very close. But the 5 extra percent that was extroverted was like really showing up strong when I was like by myself for 14 days. I just was, it was good that there was like a time ending on it. Otherwise I think I would have gone nuts. But then the problem was that I came out of my bedroom and like into
it was so
normal
bad.
Life.
Oh no.
And everything else had been shut down like during the time that I was in my bedroom. So I was expecting like, oh, let's like go out and I'm going to see all my friends.
No.
And like, I don't know what I thought. Like I'm going to go bowling.
Honestly, what did you think? Like you're going to like,
I don't know. I don't really know what my expectation was, but really I came out of my room and I was like a complete terror and I was really upset. And like that, at that point, I think I started really like kind of grieving the loss of just like regular society, which I feel like everybody has had a little bit of that to some point. So after that, that was like my low point, and I've sort of come back to being a normal person again, I think.
I've been great.
Yes, Mary Pat's perfect, Angel.
That has nothing to do with me being great. I really enjoy the secret.
Mary Pat is like 85% introverted and 15% extroverted. So, yes.
I save up all of my energy for that part.
For that 15%.
Yes, and then we go hard for the 15%.
She actually, this is touching moment.
Oh, gosh.
While I was quarantined, she would, I'd FaceTime her like outside in the living room while I was in my bedroom. And one day she FaceTimed me and she was like very upset.
Oh, geez, you don't have to.
And I was like, what's the matter? Like, why are you crying? And she was like, through tears, just expressed that she was concerned that when life goes back to normal after all of this is over, that she will not have as much time to like just pray and like cook and like do all the things that she's really enjoyed doing. So that's the difference between Mary Pat and I. Many people often ask how it is that we get along as well as we do, and I think it's because we are actually truly polar opposites in so many things.
So, okay, my heart, when we went to our friend's house, we went to Nick and Lou's house after you had gotten released from your imprisonment. We went to go have like a bonfire and have pizza, and like within, the 10 and under limit, and we've kind of created like a nucleus of safe people.
Yeah. Well, that was even before all of the
That's true. But in going over to their house, I actually had a little bit of a panic attack because I had been away from people for about 3 weeks at this point, and away from Wit too. Mm-hmm. And I'm in a room full of people, and I'm like, okay, my heart rate's going up. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something. I think I equated people in that moment for me with duty. Like I needed to be serving in some capacity if I'm in an arena with people.
Yeah.
And I think it was...
There's lots of calculations that take place on a regular basis that you don't really think about until you're not calculating.
Oh, man, I had to go to the bathroom and just like... And I pulled Whit aside and I was like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like I want to like run away.
And I was like, see? Everybody's having a hard time with this.
Except you didn't say that to me because that would have been really mean. So thanks for not doing that. No,
I would never.
She calmed me down, and then I was just able to kind of step back and ask God, like, okay, what is this? What's going on? He's like, you don't have to be anything for anybody in this moment. All you have to do is just dwell. Like, nobody's asking anything from you. You don't have to like make food. You don't have to do something. And I realized that even in my joy to be away and to take a break and to get this Sabbath moment with kind of in an enforced way globally, that I was actually able to breathe. But when I was introduced back to people, that it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you got to click back into like being all things for all people. You can just be okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's current events.
Awesome. Good job. So I feel like...
Wow, we talked about current events for 15 minutes.
I told you, this is what happens. You start talking and then it's like, ba-ba.
I'm a verbal processor too, so this
Gosh, you talk like so much.
A real exercise for me.
Ah, man. So I prayed a long time ago that I would get like a best friend God is so funny.
I don't even know what you're about to say.
You need to be careful about what you pray, people, because
I'm scared.
When you ask God for things, he loves giving you exactly what you asked for. And I asked for a best friend who would be able to, who'd really want to talk to me about stuff, who would even be like, okay, I need to like wake this person up. I'm so stoked about what I just figured out that I need to like talk it out. And sometimes I just look at her, I'm like, this is going to take a while. All right, buckle in. Like somebody get me a piece of chocolate or nice cozy drink.
And we can just popcorn.
Yeah, just watch the show.
Yep.
Okay, so the next part is, as you've so affectionately coined it, meat and potatoes, but let's hope that we change.
I'm from the Midwest, okay? It's meat and potatoes.
Fine, we'll call it.
Right, Brian? Brian's producing this show for us today, and he is also from Michigan, so meat and potatoes. It's a thing.
I would say that what this part, for an intro to the podcast, I don't know if a lot of people know exactly what we do. It
what
looks
is the title of this? 10.
It's 10 years
and 200 churches.
10 years, 200 churches.
10 years.
I mean, you could flip it. We'll figure it out.
200 years and 10 churches.
Wilderness walking.
Sometimes it feels more like that.
10 years, 200 churches. Whitney and I have been doing ministry. I mean, we've been a band since college. We have been a band. We've been doing music since
college. College now feels like high school, you know? Like when you get to that point where you're like, oh, back in high school, all the way back then, like when One Tree Hill was on TV.
Oh my gosh.
And now it's like you think of college and it's like it feels like it's taking the same space in my brain as high school because it was that far away.
I think it just happened though. Within the last like year, it's like this shift happens where it's like, oh, I'm actually 10 years older than when I graduated college. What the heck?
Yeah.
I kind of love it
well,
though.
We're heading into like our 10th year of doing what we're doing.
Yeah. So happy
feel like
anniversary.
Indeed.
We did it.
We made it.
But so in doing stuff for 10 years and playing in, is it like right at 200? A little bit under, a little bit over? We don't really know.
I think we were a little under 200, like when we came up with the actual ones that we could remember.
Right, that you could remember.
So I think we rounded it right at around 200 because there's probably some we don't remember.
And some schools and like
and that doesn't
coffee shops
also didn't count like overseas stuff. So
bars and
200
different things
within America.
Okay. That makes sense. We started this thing out as doing music. I mean, like that's what we went to school for. That's kind of what you grew up doing. I knew that I wanted to do that. That'll be a different episode. You can tell people how you really didn't want to do any of thing with ministry. Thank you, Jesus. You're so good, God. Bringing it all together. But then when we finished school, I don't know. It never really was ever like, we're going to be this big, huge band. It was more like, who are the people that we know first and where can we go serve? Yeah. And it turned out to be a ton of tiny churches in completely obscure places all over the country. And then it just kind of built upon itself and compounded, and it's turned into more of a missionary style ministry,
I think
for sure.
We initially set out to just throw everything at the wall and see what stuck.
Yes.
And obviously,
that's true.
Your end goal is like, okay, I want to be able to do this like full time and continue to do it in a way that is, profitable enough or sustaining enough to be able to have that be like my full job.
Yeah.
And so it just logically is like, well, then you want to make records, you want to be on the radio, you want to be on tours, you want to be playing big venues.
We did all of that stuff.
Open for the big name acts, and then eventually you'll be the big name act, and that'll be your life.
Right.
And so I think we sort of, without ever saying it, we were like, yeah, let's just maybe we'll end up there.
Yeah.
So we kind of always were trying to, flip the switches and put the fuses in the right things.
Are you doing a switchboard?
I'm thinking of, like a switch.
Is that what you're?
Switchboard. We were always kind of trying to route stuff. We're trying to route stuff in order to fit that model, and it just never felt right. Some of it worked fine. I mean, we've had a couple radio singles. We've had
so weird.
We've played a couple festivals. We've opened for some people that you probably have heard of before.
Yeah. And
we've been doing it for 10 years, and it still is people are kind of scratching their heads why aren't you more successful? Or why don't you have a bigger following on Instagram or whatever? And I think that it's because sort of early on we tried to, sit in front of the switchboard and plug in the things according to what everybody said. This is what you do if you want to end up being XYZ.
Yeah.
And it just never felt good. We never...
I would say that the things that felt best were when we led people in worship.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And
we did kind of try to get out of that, I think, for a while. We were okay, there's so many people that can do that, though. So let's... the thing that makes us unique is we can write our own songs, and the worship leading part was just the function of churches need people to come in and lead worship, especially smaller churches that their pastors and stuff, they don't really get a break, or they need kind of some fresh energy or something like that. So that was always the thing that we're well, we'll do this for you if you let us play our own music.
Yeah,
it was sort of this bartering thing, and that's the thing that's always been what we end up actually enjoying the most.
The consistent winner, I would say, that fulfills my heart, my soul, makes me feel like what I'm doing matters has always boiled down to leading people in worship. And then the ministry that comes afterwards when you're talking to people individually, once you finish singing the song, the praying, the counseling, the sitting with someone, crying with them, giving somebody a hug. It's all these basic tangible things that are created within a one-on-one time.
And that's why, a lot of people may not know up to this point, but we started a nonprofit last year.
Yes.
Called Just Water Within Ministries. And it sort of is like, I feel like if you're looking at like the record label model of like music, and you want to be like a successful musician, you're backed by a record label who allows you to go out and do the things that you do to the biggest audience possible, like so that your fans can come and see you play and whatever. So that kind of is a logical thing that makes sense to most people. But because like our goal is not to go out and play to the biggest crowds possible, that model is not like what we do. Instead, what we do is like more of a ministry thing. And so now we've set up Water Within Ministries.
Ministry in that it's a lot more one-on-one. It's a lot more like counsel-centric. Like it's not so much like, here was the big evening of ministry on stage.
Right.
Everyone go back to your respected homes.
It's a little bit more relational.
It's intimate,
So we've set up Water Within Ministries just to allow for us to be able to continue operating like in what we have been doing. And have some support so that we can do that kind of continually.
Sure. And what I'm excited about for future episodes on this podcast is that there's so many stories that I have a truckload of stories.
What kind of a truck?
I would say like a smaller boxcar, not like a huge semi. I don't have a semi full.
Like a moving truck, like a Penske truck?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like still adds some weight, but it's not too intrusive.
Yeah.
You asked, it's what was in my head.
The kind of truck where if you're driving up that part of I-40.
You better know what you're doing.
From East Tennessee, like right after you get out of Knoxville, it's like, this is going to suck for you. You need to take it slow.
Especially if you've never driven one before. Anyways, so I've got a truckload of stories of all these different times that we've done these one-on-one ministry moments, and they're all culturally different. They're all in different demographics of denominations of churches.
And demographics of people.
That's
generations.
Yes. There's so many different things that we've watched God do. And then there's also, even when we haven't been looking to do the ministry thing because we haven't been in a church, but maybe we were in a coffee shop or a restaurant
or a bar
or
on a street corner.
Yes. Or somebody homeless walking. Good grief. Whitney's the queen of homeless stories. She has so many encounters with people who are without a home, and she loves them super well. She makes fun of me because most of the time at the end of an event, you can't find me because I'm in a corner somewhere, like praying over somebody. Like we'll get halfway out the door and then I'm suddenly sucked back in, but that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for that moment. But that also happens to us in a restaurant or...
Sure.
That happened to us in Denver this last little bit ago. This lady, she had a cane and she was like probably my age. And I felt like God was like, hey, you should go pray for her. And I was like, we're in the middle of a restaurant. Please don't go ask me to do that. It was actually in Takabee, which is a great place. You guys need to go there.
Native American Indian food.
Oh, it's so good. Puffy tacos. Delicious. But she was there with her husband, and you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach. You're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be that person in the middle of the restaurant. But over and over and over and over and over again, those are the type of stories that we have, that God invites us into those one-on-one, intimate ministry moments where it's not just worshiping on stage. It's so much more uncomfortable than just being able to sing a blanket worship song
Just about,
on stage.
I mean, anybody that can play guitar can stand on stage and play a few songs that are mainstream worship top 40.
Yeah.
And then you get off stage and you're like,
that's great.
Out.
We're out. But to actually be close enough to know whether or not someone has bad breath, that's the money. There. Do you have any other like stories or anything that comes to your mind? I mean, like 10 years, 200 churches. Geez.
Man, I think just like the main, this is just sort of like the overall kind of like what we're pulling from for like this show is we've got a ton of stories that we'll talk more in depth on and like topics of conversation that we've sort of had to pull up and figure out like while we're on the road or while we're trying to navigate what we're doing with people or whatever. And so this just general overview is like 200 churches is like barely scratching the surface of how many churches are in this country.
Yeah.
But it's a wide enough perspective that it's like, if you've been in the same church for a long time, like there's a lot of different stuff going on that like you probably just don't know about because you go faithfully to the same church, which is as you should, that's great.
Sure.
But kind of like America is so big and broad and vast and there's so many different kinds of people here. And that's kind of the thing that makes it so wonderful.
Yeah.
But we've had the opportunity to see it, the Christian church from the inside out sort of at this point.
That's so good.
We just want to kind of give some deeper
I guess like open
understanding
your eyes.
Of like kind of what we've seen and what we've come to understand and like what God has shown us, like just traveling around like a bunch of hippies in a van for the most part.
I love it.
Playing music.
There's some moments where I'm like, boy, this is the worst thing ever. But
boy, this is the worst thing ever.
But overall,
wow,
it's the joy of my life. It really is.
Great, yeah.
It's not for everybody.
It like pains my heart in a special kind of way that I know that I probably won't be able to go out and travel like until like July. I'm like, it's only April. Like that's terrible.
Yeah.
It's like a quarter of a year
for
still.
Sure.
So
we're excited to be able to share with you guys just the different vantage points that God has been able to give us for his people, for the world at large. I mean, we've gotten to go to other countries as well as be in America, and even that has been so beautiful to be able to see how God reaches people from right where they are. So the last part of the show that we're going to do, I think we're going to end every show to the best of our abilities with a song, because we do that all right. We do that pretty well.
Let me just put it in perspective for you. We only have 3 albums out in 10 years.
10 years.
And 2 of them have 10 songs and 1 of them has 7 songs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's only 27 original songs that you have heard that we could possibly play at the end of each of these little episodes.
So you're like...
Probably there's going to be some really random songs that we choose to play.
Which I'm kind of excited for. And songs that might not even be worship songs. Just fun songs that we like love. Because there's so much beauty in all the peoples. All the peoples. Whether or not they love God or not. Like that creativity, that... initial spark of being able to make something really great. Like everything good is coming from the Father of Heavenly Lights. So we're just going to kind of rejoice in that and celebrate people that we think that are really great and who we probably want to pray into the kingdom.
Yeah, for sure.
Prophetically be like, I'm playing this song, but I really want them to come to Jesus. Yeah, just like that. So the song that we're going to sing at the end of this episode is actually the Backwards Kingdom. And my Bible's right there, but it's not in the version that I actually want it to be. Something that God has been teaching us over the past 10 years, but specifically probably the last 3 in mass quantities, is just Matthew 5. Just the principle of the Beatitudes, that God's kingdom is, when he gave this Sermon on the Mount, that it was, man, one of the most radical moments in history that he was declaring his divinity to people, where at this point in time for history, no one has done that. You weren't allowed to, unless you wanted to be, blasphemous, but he wasn't. He was just being himself, which I love that Jesus, he wasn't being casual per se, but he was just like, no, this is the truth. Just take it or leave it, but this is how it is. But what we've been able to see is that most of the things in your life that you feel like are supposed to go the one way, Jesus is usually asking you to do the opposite. Leland has a really good song about that called The Opposite Way, and I feel like this is kind of our reply to that if you want to be in God's kingdom, that you got to die to yourself first. If you want to be great, then you need to be the servant. So this song is called The Backwards Kingdom, but I'm going to read the Beatitudes in the Passion Translation, and then I'm going to do my best to remember the words to the first verse. Jesus, help me. God, I don't remember. Okay.
We've been in quarantine so long we don't remember how to sing our own songs.
I don't even remember. What does the light look like? One day Jesus saw a vast crowd of people gathering to him. So he went up the slope of the hill and sat down. With his followers and disciples spread over the hillside, Jesus began to teach them. What wealth is offered to you when you feel your spiritual poverty? For there is no charge to enter the realms of heaven's kingdom. What delight comes to you when you wait upon the Lord, for you will find what you long for. What blessing comes to you when gentleness lives in you, for you will inherit the earth. How enriched you are when you crave righteousness, for you will be surrounded by fruitfulness. How satisfied you are when you demonstrate tender mercy, for tender mercy will be demonstrated to you. What bliss you experience when your heart is pure, for then your eyes will open to see more and more of God. How blessed you are when you make peace, for then you will be recognized as a true child of God. How enriched you are when you bear the wounds of being persecuted for doing what is right, for that is when you experience the realm of heaven's kingdom. Blessed are you. Thank you, Jesus. The heart of a child is the key to the kingdom. When his generous hand is the test of his wisdom.
It's not the right word.
I know. What is it?
That's my verse.
I know. I can't remember it.
The heart of a child is the key to the
Kingdom.
where joy is growing wild.
It's such a good line. I just can't remember it. Just feed me the words. I honestly can't remember it.
Oh, brother.
You know what I love? Blessed are you when you're humble, because then you'll be lifted up. Hit it. I can't.
The heart of a child.
I can't breathe. It's so low. Okay. I'm good. You're gonna start crying. The heart of a child is the key to the kingdom.
Joy.
Where joy's growing wild, right? Where joy's growing wild and trust offers freedom. Gentleness gains ground. And gentleness gains ground. Yeah. Forgiveness finds favor. And victory waits for the one who surrenders. I remember it now. And searching for the spirit that longs to be found. Living a reality of upside down. I only find my life when I seek this first. Your beautiful kingdom. Isn't it backwards? Oh,
the enters into the kingdom. When his generous hand is the test of his wisdom. When you hold your life freely, when you give what you treasure, the Father returns what you've sown without measure. And searching for the Spirit that longs to be found, and living a reality of upside downs. I only find my life when I seek this first, your beautiful kingdom. We're laying down our pride to lift up your peace, and blessing every brother and enemy. So death itself is even working in reverse, your beautiful kingdom. Isn't it backwards? So this is the backwards kingdom. Oh, just as it is in heaven, in my heart and in my home, Lord, let it come, let it come. Oh, this is the backwards kingdom. Oh, just as it is in heaven, in my words and in my world, Lord, let it come, let it come. So this is the backwards kingdom. Oh, just as it is in heaven, in my heart and in my home, Lord, let it come, let it come. Searching for the Spirit that longs to be found, and living a reality of upside downs. I only find my life when I seek this first, your beautiful kingdom. We're laying down our pride to lift up your peace, and blessing every brother and enemy. So death itself is even working in reverse, your beautiful kingdom. Isn't it backwards? So this is the backwards kingdom. Oh, just as it is in heaven, in my heart and in my home, Lord, let it come, let it come, let it come. Made it. We made it through it. Hope you enjoyed that.
Thanks so much, guys, for being with us today on this episode of Matters Over Miles. Love you. See you guys soon.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Matters Over Miles podcast, a resource of Water Within Ministries. If you would like to be a supporter of the show, head over to water-within.com/WWM and click the donate button at the bottom of the page. All donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.